and the Committee on Finance for the remainder of the hearing on Saturday, February 9th, 9 a.m. in Conference Room 309 at the State Capitol. And we're hearing bills, House Bill 942, House Bill 219, House Bill 593, House Bill 1134, House Bill 1133, and House Bill 589. What we're hoping is that for all the people that are testifying today, that you will collectively, hopefully your testimony is covering all those bills I mentioned, because they're all related to public lands and how we're going to develop public lands and the whole discussion about the Public Land Redevelopment Corporation. But you always are welcome to comment on the individual bill unless you want to do it collectively. We did have House Bill 942. That bill, wait a minute. Okay, that bill is relating to harbors and parks development. It establishes the Harbors and Park Development Authority to coordinate and administer programs to make optimal use of harbors and parklands while ensuring that the public lands are maintained for the people of Hawaii. On that particular bill, we ended up with written testimony that got submitted prior to 5 p.m. last evening, and we had 108 people submit written testimony, and of the 108, it appears about 5 people supported it and a few people offered comments, but the majority of it was in opposition. So that was on the first bill. With that, is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak specifically to that particular bill? Just that bill, not for the whole 5 bills, just to that bill. Okay, with that, I'll start with you, sir. Come on up.
I'm Bill Sager. I'm speaking on behalf of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party. I submitted my testimony last evening after the deadline. I'm concerned with the aspects that are similar to the PLDC, but I recognize that bill has been heavily amended and much improved, but I am concerned specifically about why the planning function for our state parks has been removed from the Division of State Parks and placed in this legislation.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Yes, Bill Isla, please.
Thank you, chairs, vice chairs, and members. The department stands very strongly in support of this bill, and if you would give me a few minutes, I would like to explain, because I think the...
Excuse me, can you hear? Members, can you hear?
I'll speak closer. Is that better?
Thank you. That's better. Thank you.
So a few comments to explain some of the misconceptions. So I just want to make sure that everybody in the audience understands that this bill removes all the exemptions that were listed in Act 55. This bill has added nonprofits to the entities that can be partnered with for the development of harbors and parks. This bill clearly states that there shall be no transfer of land in fee simple to the authority, so there can be no sale of ceded lands. This bill replaces the Director of Budget and Finance with the Administrator from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. It adds 2 voting members representing the community, representing community organizations that are related to the environment. And with regards to the statement that was just made, we have not moved our planning efforts to this particular bill. We continue to have 1 planner on staff for state parks. That person will continue to develop state parks as much as that 1 person is able to. This bill allows us to get technical expertise and technical assistance from HCDA. So I just wanted to make those points very, very clear. And if you will indulge me, Madam Chair, the department, just make it easier on all the other bills that are later. The department appreciates the intent of all of those bills, but we prefer and support this bill, House Bill 942, House Draft 1, to all the other bills. So that's to save time. Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll be ready for questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else? Yes, please. Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Aloha, Chair, members. Mahalo for this opportunity. Again, my name is Jocelyn Doan. I'm the Senior Public Policy Advocate at the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. The reason why I wanted to testify, OHA's submitted significantly different testimony for each bill, except for House Bill 593, because our position on each bill varies widely. And so I just wanted to share with you briefly some comments on House Bill 942. Our position on this bill is comment. We wanted to note and express our appreciation for House Bill 942 to the extent that it removes the broad land use zoning exemptions, as Chair Ayla mentioned. It explicitly provides for representation of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. It prohibits fee simple transfers, and it also removes the revenue bond provisions, which would have allowed projects to be the bonds to be secured, project-specific revenue bonds using public lands, and we thought that was really important to note. We do, however, want to note that all of our small port harbors and park lands are public lands, and in most instances, ceded lands to which our people have never relinquished their claims. And as the bill anticipates public-private partnerships, we just wanted to mention a few points that we think need to be considered. And these would be possible loss of potential state revenues, loss of public interest considerations other than purely revenue generation, loss of public accountability, and potential loss of local jobs and for our local people. And so those are just some of the comments that we thought need to be considered as we're looking at this as an option. Mahalo.
Thank you. And please, people in the back, if you, for conversations, would you please go outside, because we are hearing you, we are starting to hear you up here. Thank you. Other individuals on 942, Margaret Willey, please.
Margaret Willey, yes, an individual and also County Council Member, District 9, North and South Kohala. The harbors and parks, including Kauai Harbor, are critical to this district and our county, so this is important. I do have some problems with this bill. I think that it does coalesce all the power into a very small group. I don't see the community development plans. I was on the CDP steering committee for South Kohala. I don't think having talk story with the mayor or the planning director is adequate. Right now with Kauai Harbor, we have essentially 7 agencies working, in my view, in silos, not coordinating. I just see this still taking power out of those who will be impacted most. Recently, or within the past few days, I was told that the swimmers are being discouraged and not going to be permitted to swim in the area where they are all swimming, using for recreation, and that it interferes with some of the other boat uses, and that this is coming down from DLNR. Basically, in a lot of these recreational areas that are so critical to the health of the county, I just see this as, I'm afraid, and I don't trust, and I realize that it all looks good and we're doing it all for the people, and I just worry that a lot of these are sort of smoke screens, as well as, say, a lot of the things on the affordable housing. It just sort of looks good. And yet, let me just say, I brought a lawsuit on my own against the state to help provide more access for the people to the forests, and to work out a way that it could be a win-win situation. And the DLNR said, is fighting me, and we're at the appellate court. So I'm afraid, and that's what I can say. for my people, Kauai Harbor is critical. Our parks are critical. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else here on 942? Please, the guy in what's his name? Arvin? Arvin first. Thank you.
Chair Lady, Representative Evans, my name is Arvid Youngquist. I would like to testify on House Bill 942. I have not submitted a written testimony for this bill. I did provide written testimony for a previous committee, for which I provided opposition testimony. However, there is a House Draft 1, and I'm not sure if that Draft 1 refers to the effective date change. It says July the 1st, 3000. Now that could change in conference, hopefully, to something more reasonable, but not too soon, like 25 years or further in the future. I like to make sure that the bill distinguishes between small boat harbor and harbors. And this bill may be done at the expense of a separate executive branch in reference to harbors. I want to make sure that this doesn't affect the public sector employees involved. For example, recently, starting with the beginning of the year, the AG's office lost their ID card, state ID card function to the city and county, and now I understand the legislature wants an audit report on what happened with the long lines and so forth, service complaints. So I want to make sure that whatever agency takes over in implementing House Bill 942, if you enact it, consults with the respective unions so that no employee is displaced and so on and so forth. And I have other things that I'd like to talk about, but because my time is going to be up, I would like to jointly testify on those at my second turn at the podium.
Yes,
thank you very
yes.
much.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Chun, I believe. Please come up.
Chun James Sankahuku. I'm opposing this bill. I am not a paid lobbyist, and I'm just a citizen who is increasingly concerned at the direction that Hawaii is heading into. In our opinion, we don't understand why there is a need to create more and more fiefdoms. There is already a system and a structure in place. We feel that it is more important to help and support those existing organizations and structures by helping it be more efficient and effective rather than laying more and more layers of bureaucratic departments. Also, it doesn't mean that every time there is a new pharaoh in Egypt that things need to be changed. And in our looking again from the from the outside in, we feel that this is a very developer-driven, and the concentration of power is frightening. Again, there is already existing infrastructure and system to take care of the needs of this state. Let's use that. Let's audit it if we have to, and let's support it in order to make it more efficient and effective. We oppose this bill for these reasons and many other good reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we have Robert Harris. You had your hand up. I saw that first.
Good morning, aloha, Chair Luke, Chair Evans. My name is Robert Harris on behalf of the Sierra Club. Narrowly limited to this specific bill, we know that there probably needs to be a more extensive discussion about how this moves forward. For example, we know that there was recently just an analysis done of nationally looking at trying to find creative alternative approaches for the 21st century of funding parks and harbors, written by Margaret Walls, and it actually looks at various concepts such as privatization, creating foundational funding streams, looking at user park fees, and actually does a pretty extensive analysis of what the various options are going forward, and in fact it even references Hawaii's attempts to look at a bag fee as a funding mechanism. Looking at privatization, one of the comments it makes is it oftentimes is looked at too much of a panacea, and frequently the cost to government wind up being higher. There are very specific examples where it may make sense, but we should be guided by those principles and not simply look at it as an ability to get out. Plainly, with the controversy of the Public Lands Development Corporation, we think that the appropriate way to do this is to start with a clean slate, remove that, and actually allow some of the stakeholders to actually have a conversation about how to move forward best with this kind of concept to make sure that we're able to maximize the recreational opportunities, the open space opportunities for everyone in Hawaii, but also minimize the impact on the general budget. But in addition, we also note that the state has not been performing its task to date. For example, currently the Parks Division has one property manager to oversee things like doing RFPs or doing leases. The Boats and Harbors Division has 0. So, one simple way to simply improve on what we have in the status quo is to look to make sure that those positions are funded and that we actually hire people for those positions before we create an entire authority with the additional expense of an executive director and secretary and other kinds of responsibilities. I hope by this testimony I'm showing that there is a genuine interest in trying to make sure that we have the best parks and the best harbors. But again, we think this discussion is something that's going to take some time, and we don't really simply want to rush through with the legislation being proposed. We'd prefer to start with a clean slate and try to really have a good discussion. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you. We have 4 people standing, so would you come up? Michelle, right?
Thank you, Chair Evans. I'm Michelle Matson. I'm president of the Oahu Islands Parks Conservancy. House Bill 942 renames the PLDC as the Harbors and Parks Development Authority. HB 942 is simply the PLDC in a new costume with some of the bulk removed. This bill makes a mockery of lands and facilities held in the public trust to benefit present and future generations, and is the antithesis of ensuring that the public lands are maintained for the people of Hawaii. This measure proposes to ultimately and underhandedly carve up and exploit the people's lands under the guise of maintenance. Such exploitation of harbors and park land echoes that of the PLDC development, which includes but is not limited to resort accommodations such as hotels, homes, vacation rentals, and timeshares, commercial uses, office towers and business facilities, industrial fueling, storage, and repair facilities, etc. But specifically within Hawaii's state parks and recreational boat harbors. This proposed legislation continues the abusive call to exploit our natural and visual resources, which flies in the face of the public interest to protect and preserve our treasured state parks and recreational boat harbors for the public's use and enjoyment. Will this misguided legislation now enable a commercial strip mall in Diamond Head Crater, or satiate a giddy tailspin around pile driving a skyrise into the center of the Alawai Recreational Boat Harbor, or belch energy from our conservation lands by fracking the Aina with untold hazard of quaking our island chain? Such blatant and relentless attempts to exploit Hawaii's public lands held undeniably in both the native Hawaiian public trust and the general public trust should not be allowed to be forced upon our protected, world-renowned, and iconic natural resources, blasted into our treasured small boat harbors, or driven into the heart of the Aina of our islands with untold repercussions. We ask that responsible legislators hold this bill in this committee in the greater public interest for the recreational health, welfare, and safety of present and future generations of Hawaii's residents and visitors alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Please come to the podium. Next in line.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Mahina Martin. I traveled here today from Maui. Later on, I will testify in support of House Bill 1133 and Bill 589, seeking a repeal. But before you now is House Bill 942. And in response to this, I will say that this bill is an insult. It is an insult that has taken those of us who have fought the PLDC, its injustice, its lack of respect for neighbor islands, to the next level. If you look at House Bill 942, it will talk about raising money, creating revenue-generating opportunities for the new agency. It's talking about, in turn, revenues generated may be used to offset regulatory functions of the Department of Land and Natural Resources. This is another case of language not happy, that we are not happy with. In House Bill 942, it also talks about that there are permissible uses of our harbors and park lands. These public lands that are deemed for us can now be used for office space, parking, commercial uses. It cleverly crosses off hotel, residential, and timeshare uses, but adds in accommodations, fueling facilities, storage, repair facilities. So those remained. It also added additional voting members. It went from the 5 PLDC board to 7. However, the 2 7 members identified as those who will come from community organizations relating to the environment, again, do not recognize or acknowledge neighbor island, while 80% of public lands remain in neighbor islands. This is a continuing disagreement from neighbor island communities. So this insulting bill continues that. I also want to point out that House Bill 942 talks again about coordinating with county planning departments. There is no requirement to adhere to mitigate. It only talks about coordinating. Same language as Act 55, where coordinating also means taking suggestions from the county. So again, I just want to point out that this bill, you cross out the name, you put in Parks and Harbors Development Authority, and you will get the same group of people, the same arguments, because it's the same thing. So I ask you to not proceed with this bill and stop the circling that we're doing around it, and let's get down to just repealing the PLDC and Act 55. Mahalo.
Thank you. Okay, if we clap on each one, we're trying to get through this as fast as can. Please, next in line.
Good morning, Chair Evans, members of the Joint Committee. 1 second here. Cade Watanabe here on behalf of Unite Here Local 5. We represent about 10,000 hotel, healthcare, and food service workers throughout the state. I'd like to stand on our written testimony in opposition to HB 942. We will, of course, like many others here, be speaking on the more related PLDC bills. But I do want to echo the concerns that was raised by Mr. Harris in recognizing the good intentions of this bill, but at the same time recognizing that it is our belief that the most harmful parts of Act 55 will continue to live on in HB 942. And so for those reasons, we'd ask the committee to defer and to oppose this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, please.
Aloha, my name is Keiko Bonk. I forgot to say in my last testimony that I am representing a small organization called Pono. And Pono brings together cultural change through good science and policy development through ethics.
Keiko, if it's easier for you, it does, yeah.
Hold it up?
Yeah.
You got this little step here making it hard for us. Anyway, I'm opposing this bill as well. I am against the privatization of public lands for private use and intentions. whether you call it the PLDC or the HPDA or the LMNOG. These acronyms are all the same thing. You're trying to privatize public property for corporate interest. Harbors and parks. Well, we already have things set in process at the county levels to take care of more user needs for our harbors and parks, but we don't use them, and we should probably start using them more. They're called developer agreements. And when developers come to your island, all our islands, they can sit down with the county council or with the mayor's office and develop what we call a developer's agreement. And in there you can talk about the true cost of making these developments throughout your islands. And then these true costs we should have been addressing for at least the last century, all the needs that we have for our people in Hawaii. But we've been ignoring them at all these levels of government. I have witnessed that myself. So we give away our opportunities at these various meetings where we're pretty much sucking up to developers to build things that we don't really need. More golf courses, more hotels, more housing for rich people. And at that point, we could be asking them to, okay, what are you going to do about the care of our public parks? What are you going to do in terms of expanding the roads and the harbors and the education system and the public services, police, fire, schools, and so forth and so on? We don't do that. That's where we're breaking down. That's why we need these kind of fast fixes after the fact. And so if we go back and examine the fact that we already have things in place to take care of true costs in Hawaii, the true cost of our parks and our harbors, but we're not doing it. That's the problem. We're not doing it because our system is corrupt in terms of the campaign financing coming in from developers that want to fast track these kinds of projects that have taken place all over the state. I know it firsthand on the Big Island the most because that's where I'm from, and I've been in county government, and I've seen it firsthand. Money pushing for bypassing the cost of parks and harbors and roads and infrastructure and services. So what do? Well, we stop right now. We don't do this bill. We go back and we analyze and we look at the true assets that we have and we say, how are we going to fix it? As far as parks are concerned, we can use some more user fees both at the county and the state level. Right
so
now,
I'm sorry, Keiko, can you summarize?
Okay.
And, we appreciate the fresh ideas and would love to hear from you on that.
Honokahau Harbor.
Okay.
Can I just illustrate this one story? Honokahau Harbor.
Please, and wrap it up. Thank you.
Honokahau Harbor, I'm old enough right now to remember what it looked like before it was Honokahau Harbor and the tourist sort of mecca that it's become. It was a beautiful Native Hawaiian village. Beautiful. In fact, a culturally significant village that my father, who was an archaeologist, recommended to the state of Hawaii that they do not blow up that village in order to build a harbor. And the state at that time refused to do this because they were not culturally sensitive in the 1970s. They didn't care. They gave my dad a half a year with his university students and himself and his family, myself, every weekend, the time to go down there and do a quantitative study. That means you go down with buckets rather than doing sensitivity studies where you go down centimeter by centimeter to study a culturally sensitive area. You just go in with buckets and you dig it up as fast as you can in order to throw it somewhere later so you can sort through it and see what you actually had there. Well, I was a kid. I was in high school. And I knew at that point when we were going through all that artifacts and cultural material, that this place was pretty significant. I knew as a kid because I had been all over the island with my father looking at Native Hawaiian sites, and this place, you didn't have to look. It was just set up that way with the cave site and everything. And the state of Hawaii at that time was so culturally insensitive that they didn't care, and they just told this archaeologist, pretty much go shove it. So he went and did the best he could with his students from the University of Hawaii, but they blew it up anyway. And you know, really, this seems like the same kind of mentality to me. I mean, basically, the handful of people that are going to follow these kind of issues at the legislature are going to be the same people like myself and everyone here with good intentions and love of the Aina. But, you know, we sometimes feel that Hawaii just moves that way. Developers get what they want, and the real people of Hawaii, especially the Native Hawaiians, are always getting the short end of the deal.
Okay.
And
thank you.
We're running out of places to fight for and kill this bill.
Okay, thank you. Next, Henry Curtis.
Aloha, chairs, vice chairs, and members of the committee. Thank you for the 19 who were here on the last bill and the 14 who are left. I'm Henry Curtis, Executive Director of Life of the Land. This bill says that the funds might be used for increasing revenue for agencies. It might not be. And if it is, the legislature could cut the funding to those agencies so that there is no net gain for those agencies. The budget is the moral document of this legislature. It defines what you think is important and what you don't think is important. We hope that you value the public spaces, the open areas. We note that Ho'opili and Koa Ridge were giveaways to developers who took away prime ag land and who added to traffic congestion and did not have to cover impact fees. A simple way of raising money for the state would be to say, if you're going to do a major development, give the state some revenue to cover for impact fees so that we can do all the things the state needs to do. Alternatively, if you want to raise money for the state, you could simply turn off the air conditioning in this room. We're all freezing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Henry. Next in line, please.
Aloha mai kako, chairs, vice chairs, members of the House committees. I'd like to comment that there's actually more than a handful of people participating in this advocacy. As of yesterday, I had heard from someone in the Capitol that there was over 7,000 testimony come in on these issues. And I am so proud to be a part of one of those many at that particular time and more growing that are saying, please hear our pleas. My name is Juanita Kawamoto, Subcommittee Chair of the Food and Farm Sustainability of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii and a Native Hawaiian citizen advocate. We are in strong opposition to House Bill 942, HD1, relating to harbors and parks development. Opposition to this kind of legislation is the only recourse of the people of Hawaii to protect their rights and the Aina we treasure and aloha. The parks and harbors have been able to exist for our community without the worry of unwanted development, and we must protect these liberties for the future of Hawaii's coming generations. The lack of respect and refusal to consider our community belittles the integrity of what should be the people's government. Opposition by the entire House and Senate of Hawaii and the demand for repeal of the PLDC is the only way the state can redeem itself for allowing such a terrible injustice of the entitlements of the people of Hawaii. The Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii strongly opposes this bill. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Gary Hooser, please.
Good morning, I think, still, or is it good afternoon? See, you got me all nervous. Good morning, chairs, members of the committees. I'm going to basically stand on my testimony in opposition to this measure and urge the committees to support a full repeal of the PLDC and resist amendments, morphing, or just renaming it. I have much more extensive testimony I'm going to save for when those bills come forward, but I did want to publicly state I'm in opposition to this for many reasons that were stated prior to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next in line, please.
Hi, aloha, chairs and committee members. Thank you again for coming on a Saturday and allowing us to testify. And I think you're experiencing a lot of frustration, anger. It seems like it might be directed towards you all, but from what I understand of the legislative process and how this bill went through last year, I think a lot of legislators were kind of hoodwinked, if I could use that word, and that a lot of revisions were added at the last minute. The bill was revised, another bill was gutted. And so, kind of echoing the remarks of Robert Harris, Sierra Club, the Surfrider Foundation feels like that there are some aspects of these bills that we support in improving our public parks, raising needed money to improve these areas and harbors. But again, I have to emphasize it's the process that's the most important part. We have worked with DLNR on the bag fee bill, and we know there are good people there with good intentions, but these kind of bills, and this bill in particular, which we kind of refer to as PLDC Light, you know, under a different name, it's still basically the same thing. The process was the most important thing. This was a top-down thing that was dictated on us, whereas working on the bag fee bill that we're hoping to pass this year, all the community groups were brought in, we were educated, we worked together, and we formed a consensus. And that's how it should be done. So the PLDC bills that were passed last year and these reiterations that they're trying to do, it's about betraying the process. None of us were consulted in this process. We weren't brought in. And so to try to do it, you know, after the fact is still kind of insulting to a lot of us, because you're trying to ask us to, you know, believe in something, and I'm not saying you all, but the people that push this, when we weren't consulted in the process at all. We weren't involved. And so I think that's why you see this kind of opposition to these bills, because we need to go back and start from scratch, and we can work together to improve streamline some of these regulations maybe, not bypass them completely, and work together to produce something that would better these parks, but not something that's done after the fact to revise something that was broken to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in line, please.
Hello. All right, so first of all, I just want to say Happy Chinese New Year. And I stand here before you in opposition to House Bill 942, and I understand that it's similar to the PLDC. And what bothers me about this bill is the exemptions from it, and the fact that you know, us everyday community folks are unable to speak our voice, our minds to it. And I don't know about you, but when my family ever comes together, they always like to go to Ka'ava Beach Park to go spearfishing or just hanging out. And the thought that that place might not be there, whether it being now or in the future, it really bothers me, because it really is special to my family. And I just wanted to think about, for everyone here, to think about places here in Hawaii that mean something to you, that are on public lands, and then, or that could be intruded or taken away from us because of bills such as this. And lastly, I want to thank the following representatives for voting no on, voting to repeal the PLDC, which is Representative Hano, Lee, Luke, Lowen, Ying, Ward, Ono, Johansson, Fukumoto, and Thielen. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next in line, please.
Aloha, Chair and Member. My name is Bart Dame. I'm speaking on behalf of Progressive Democrats of Hawaii. I'm speaking against this bill, and I'm speaking in general against all the bills that are trying to amend the PLDC, and do support those two that call for repeal. I think you can sense from the audience and from public discussion there's a lot of distrust. There is this gap between the public and the legislators who voted for this bill, the administration that promoted it, and some of the government officials who have been involved in trying to salvage this bill. And I think that's unfortunate. I bear a lot of personal aloha for a lot of the key players in this. And so I feel saddened that I have to come here and ask for the complete repeal of the PLDC and not cooperate on some of these attempts to refine it. But I think what happened is that if we listen to the governor's speech, and he said a lot of things, he's been in a very jovial mood for the last couple of months, and I appreciate his tone. But what he said is, he said, don't start with asking the question, what kind of dangers can I foresee? I'm sorry, that's irresponsible. I think we have to stand on one leg and say, what are the potentialities? What are the problems that we can possibly solve by being creative with new legislation? Then we stand on the other leg. What are the risks that we are going to create if we follow that course? And have that dialogue, have that discussion, and then come up with realistic guidelines as to how to minimize the dangers that are in the legislation. The original legislation was wide. Don't tell me you're building a bike path when you can take tour buses on it. If you want to only solve narrow things, you construct the law that way. You don't have to rely upon cooperation and goodwill of the appointed members. You structure the law so that their duties are restricted so they can do good things and they're shielded from doing bad things. Now, part of this ill will, I think, I relate it to if you're involved in a marriage and your partner says, you know, I think we ought to start seeing other people. Why don't we have an open relationship? And, you know, that kind of hits you in the chest, and you say, wait. No, that's totally unacceptable. And then they come back and say, okay, but how's about you let me go out bowling with my buddies a couple nights a week? And they go, no, you said you wanted an open relationship. I don't trust you on the bowling. I'm going to watch you more close. And I think that's a situation we have here right now. So repeal the PLDC, start afresh, and we'll begin anew, and we'll start from a spirit of aloha. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next in line, please.
I'm Bill Sager. I'm testifying on behalf of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party. This is not a position of the Democratic Party as a whole. When President Teddy Roosevelt created the National Park System, he hired Gifford Pinchot as the first forester of the U.S. Forest Service. And the mandate that Gifford Pinchot gave to his forest managers was to provide the best uses for the most people in the long run. That's still a sound policy for public land use. The PLDC is mandated to develop state land to maximize economic reform. It doesn't have to consider environmental impacts, cultural impacts, social impacts. It doesn't have to consider anything but economic return. That's bad public policy. The PLDC can sell public land. It can enter into long-term leases on ceded land that it can't sell. It can enter into public-private partnerships in a no-bid process with no public oversight and with no regard to any kind of environmental, cultural, or even county zoning permitting. The people who support the PLDC tell us that the rules can correct these kind of deficiencies.
Thank you. On House Bill 942 relating to harbors and parks development, do you have a more specific to this bill?
Okay, I understood that when you introduced this, you told us that we could talk to one bill or to the whole package.
No, we prefer if you're just for 942 because we're all the rest will be on the specific to PLDC. Thank you. So this should be our last testifier on 942 unless someone specific to the language of harbors and parks development.
Chair Evans, Chair Luke,
I am Karen Amai, testifying for the League of Women Voters of Hawaii. This bill simply excerpts a subset of potential PLDC properties and creates another authority. It makes little sense to have PLDC still alive and a separate authority being proposed. The governor's package should have clearly stated a preference for one or the other, and it doesn't make sense to have two bills with conflicting authority and responsibility in the hopper. I think that exists at the current time. Further, the DLNR already has the authority to generate specific proposals for revenue generation from private land uses of underutilized lands. If the DLNR were adequately funded, and if its funds were protected from being raided for other purposes, there would be less need for another authority. The mission of the DLNR as the steward of the public lands of the state is more trustworthy with respect to safeguards to the public interest than the unknown quantity that an authority would make, which would make all small boat harbors, launching ramps, and state parks and their surrounding lands vulnerable to development. Thank you. We urge you to vote down this bill.
Okay. Any other testifiers on 942? I'm sorry. There's a lady with her children, and then, okay. Thank you.
Hi, representatives. My name is Jessica Mitchell. Oh, I didn't have time to submit online. I'm busy with the GMO bills. So I just wanted to oppose this bill, just trying to protect everything for my children. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, please come up. Thank you.
Aloha, I'm Ka'imi Nicholson, and in addition to the Unitarian Church, I also represent the Aloha Light team. I want to emphasize that the process for decision-making and governance is vital to the success, and this is not the way to do it. I oppose this bill, and I want the stakeholders, the people who are involved, to be decision makers, including for the harbors. That would be the boat owners and those who live on the boats as well. Thank you so much. Aloha.
Okay, aloha. Okay, what I'd like to do is move on to the rest of the agenda and start testimony. We have House Bill 219, House Bill 593, House Bill 1134. Those three bills actually propose amendments, and we got, as of 5 o'clock last night, between 120 testimonies, and I would say 96% of them were in opposition to them, with a few that offered comments and maybe a couple with support. Then on House Bill 1133, House Bill 589, those are two bills that address the repeal of the Public Land Development Corporation. We got somewhere between 250 and 300 written testimony by 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon, and as you can imagine, almost all of them were in support of the repeal. So having said that, out of courtesy to those that paid to fly over today, round trip to be here to testify, if you would raise your hands, we want to make sure that we're assuming that you will be going home here shortly. We would really, out of courtesy, if everyone will please obligate, be patient with us, we would like to allow them up first. So please raise your hands. I saw Margaret Willie. Margaret. I saw Gary Hooser. I think, yes, please. There's 3 or 4 more.
Margaret Willie, resident of the Big Island, member of the Hawaii County Council. I am on the council, the chair of the Agriculture, Water, Energy, and Sustainability Committee. I ask that you kill all of these bills, that you don't deliberate over them all, that you look at this as an opportunity to bring all of us together and look at a holistic vision of what we're doing. I see, yes, I support HB 1133 and all of those that say to repeal, and oppose all that seek to amend. I see the PLDC last year as really a clever manipulation of the legislative process. I see each of these revisions as a more clever manipulation of the process by way of sort of carving out different interest groups, whether it's those concerned, legitimate interests, whether it's the education bill moving forward, whether, and let me just say, the key question that, including Representative Vail brought up, is really where do we get the money? I mean, most of these are fast money for good causes. And if we're going to look at money, let's sit and think, is this what we want to do, sort of steal our future, steal the public lands, and use them for short-term, quote-unquote, optimal economic short-term interests, rather than looking at the well-being of the island as a whole? Each of these bills has a different way, or whether it's carving out OHA, and let's give OHA more money and have a little sensitivity to the culture. Each one is trying to undermine the opposition. I do understand the good intentions to seek funds. I think that I could give you many ways that I believe are alternative ways to bring in funds, and I think that's an important question that we need to address. But the public lands is a public trust for the benefit of the Native Hawaiians and the general public. It is for the benefit of not just current generations, but future generations. We should have the highest standards in terms of how we decide to use those lands. Just from the point of view, our council 3 days ago passed a resolution 4513 with unanimous vote to repeal PLDC. Basically the issue of home rule, that the people on the neighbor islands will no longer tolerate state legislation that undermines that principle of the county councils as the policy branch, the CDPs, and having the right to county oversight. We want to participate in a positive way, and we want to help, but we need to clear this slate. All of these bills are poisoned by a sense of a process and substance gone awry. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Gary Hooser. Gary, you're from Kauai.
Good afternoon again. My name is Gary Hooser. I'm a Kauai County Council member, also chair of the Agricultural Sustainability and Intergovernmental Affairs Committee. And I'm speaking on my own behalf. However, I do have a resolution from the Kauai County Council attached to my testimony, a unanimous resolution supporting the full repeal of the PLDC, complete repeal. And I'm here today to urge you to vote unanimously in support of a full and complete repeal of the PLDC. Chair Evans, I commend you and Chair Luke for holding this hearing today. And I read something, I believe, Chair Evans, that you said you were looking for compelling reasons. You know, what are the most compelling reasons? And that really gave me pause to think about it. I know there's lots of reasons, but what are the most compelling reasons? And to me, it's like a trifecta, a very bad trifecta, a perfect storm, if you will, a bad process, bad policy, and bad politics. Okay? I believe these three areas have combined and so severely tainted this entire thing that the only good option is a complete repeal. Attempts to morph, amend, or simply change the name are insufficient remedies and will not heal, repair, or reinstill the public confidence, which is what needs to happen now. The process that created Act 55 in the PLDC and the subsequent process attempting to salvage and solve public concerns range from unconstitutional to insulting. Senate Bill 155 was passed into law without the requisite 3 readings in each house and there was never a proper public hearing on the substance of the major amendments that significantly alter the content of the bill. Clearly, giving the public less than 2 hours public notice does not meet any reasonable standard that would satisfy constitutional requirements. Since then, the process has continued to go astray as the PLDC stuttered through the rulemaking process, attempting to convince the public that rules, policies, plans, and good intentions would be sufficient to protect them from bad law. In addition to the serious errors and mistakes that were made in the process, the fundamental policy and the law supporting that policy is also flawed, seriously flawed. Starting the conversation with a premise that public lands are a resource that should be developed as quickly and as profitably as possible, and that we should set aside environmental and public interest protections in the interest of expediency, is set up for a true tragedy of the commons. If anything, the opposite is true. Our public land should be held to the highest standard in terms of environmental and public interest protections, and should be developed slowly, if at all, and then based only upon a long-term, community-based vision, rather than on short-term profits and the plans of 5 men on Oahu, well-intentioned, working with private developers, telling the rest of the community what's best for them. 80% of the lands or more of these potentially impacted lands are located on the neighbor islands. There was no neighbor island representation included, and most of the meetings have been held on Oahu. Many of the concerns about the PLDC extend to all these other items on the agenda. I'm going to summarize. I know there's a lot of people that want to speak, so I'll try to get to the more. So the obvious thing was the exemptions from all statutes, ordinances, charter provisions, and rules of any government agency. The PLDC sought to get rid of all these rules and basically say, trust me. In addition, it's my understanding that virtually all the projects mentioned as examples of why we need this can be accomplished without these exemptions, without the elimination of public protections, and without any new public-private development entity. Bad process, bad policy, and bad politics. Many in our community, especially young people, are increasingly distrustful and disengaged from the public process and from government. The creation of the PLDC and all that has followed since has further alienated large numbers of our residents from all walks of life and on every island. These are good people who want to believe in the democratic process and who we need to believe and to engage in our process, but who are now even more angry and more distrustful than ever. Bad process, bad policy, and bad politics have combined to make the perfect storm, and the only way to calm this storm and to right that canoe we're always talking about, is to pass a complete and full repeal of the PLDC. No morphing, no amending, no name changes. The public wants to know that our lawmakers listen to them. The public believes that the fix is in and has little confidence in us or in the institutions in which we serve. Please, please pass a full and complete repeal today and help restore the faith and confidence of the people of our state in their government. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, please, we're listening. We want testifiers who flew in today and have to leave to go back.
Thank you, Chair, for the consideration. My name is Mahina Martin. I'm here from Maui. On House Bill 219, while I applaud the culturally sensitive development plan that it points out, that it sets forth, it continues to include language that says that it will be exempt from all statutes, ordinances, charter provisions, rules of any government agency relating to assessments, requirements, construction standards for subdivisions, improvement of land, and others. So, again, this is a cause of concern for us, particularly in the communities on the neighbor island. In House Bill number 1134, I have to say, the point that caught my attention is that it went from a 5-member PLDC board to a 7-member. And the addition of 2 members are 2 members who are now identified as non-voting. One non-voting member shall be the cultural expert appointed. Another non-voting member shall have substantial experience or expertise in traditional Hawaiian land usage and knowledge of cultural land practices. Yet these 2 are non-voting out of the 7. The remaining 5 are the existing PLDC board positions. I will say that these 2 are tokens. Do not put 2 Native Hawaiian cultural experts on a board with financial experts and not give them equal voting rights to something as important as this. This is called a token. So if we're going to expand and include anything, PLDC or anything else, it should be of equal value. So I know you know this, and it's just a reminder. I am here today from Maui, born and raised. For the better part of my 30-plus adult years, I have been involved in our community through youth sports, athletics, through social services, through government, and through everything that most of you have been involved in. It is no easy feat to come to Oahu each time. And yet, I have to say that for several months now, I've tried to understand why it has become such an epic struggle to have our voices of opposition heard and acknowledged about the PLDC. And here we sit with amendments to this, to the PLDC in Act 55. So over time, surely many of us thought our voices should be heard and would be heard because you're like us, right? Our state legislators are like us. You live like us, you shop like us, you breathe like us, you raise your kids like us. So when we question and we were pushed back, independent citizens such as I could not fathom why we were getting the level of pushback, shut down, and shove it down your throat politics that we were experiencing. And excuse me if I sound frustrated and angry, but quite frankly I am. And I think that I reflect a good population of our neighbor islands. Over time, in this experience, there was no courtesy of response, engagement, dialogue, updates, as changes, revisions, and plans took place within the PLDC regardless of our input. The PLDC came to our islands, as you know, told us nothing about what they were going to do, met us at the door with stacks of paper, told us it was a hearing with no questions that could be asked or answered, took our comments and concerns, promised to get back to nearly 1,000 of us on all islands except Lanai, because they weren't held a meeting there. But the next time we heard back, we were told to come to Oahu for a midweek, midday meeting, one meeting, to go over what we had expressed were concerns, to hear the changes. What kind of community engagement is that? It doesn't work that way, not for us. But yet, as they said, they could not return to the neighbor islands to continue their meetings. I know that they flew. PLDC staff flew to the neighbor islands to meet with council members because our councils on the neighbor islands voted unanimously to repeal this bill, Act 55. So why spend money to lobby when you can't spend money to come and meet with a community that disagrees with you? That's the challenge. And so this is the character of a new agency. So when you amend a bill, it's the same agency. We have survived several months of mishandling, distrust, disrespect, and Oahu-centric decisions that ultimately place public lands, of which 80% are on the neighbor islands, in the hands of an appointed 5-member Oahu board and its staff. Today, we are too far gone past the trust us, we're going to fix it and amend it or adjust it, whatever you call it. The level of patching and fixing required will give us legislation again that would be bad law. Act 55 disregarded the hard work of Neighbor Island Citizen-Based Planning Commission. It gave a 5-member Oahu board authority to hire outside of Hawaii and outside of the country with no commitment to hire local companies, construction or contractors. It would not produce immediate revenue to meet DLNR's shortage of funds that exists today, not in the year 3000. It ignored county zoning laws that protected our neighborhoods and businesses. We worked hard to get those zoning laws. We went through the local debates. It uses money from the state legacy land trust to pay for agency staff and expenses. Trust monies that's used to protect and preserve areas such as native forests and heiau. Why are those funds being taken to support commercialization of public funds? I hope you will recognize how the public's trust has been shattered. This is an opportunity, legislators. I ask you to practice the kind of leadership that Hawaii needs today. Rushing, patched up legislation through the next 12 or so weeks will result in a bad law. Repeal the PLDC, don't amend it. Something this big ought to be public-driven, citizen-based, and this process takes time because it's supposed to. Meaningful community engagement is supposed to. So again, I ask that you exercise a leadership that is collaborative with your communities, our communities of Hawaii, communities that live daily with your decisions. And I completely understand that there is an interest in a new day in Hawaii, but my interest is in a new way for Hawaii. We talk about a canoe. Over 20 years I've been coaching and paddling. You talk about canoes, you talk about a crew, you talk about paddling together and breaking through a wave and surviving a huli canoe. Let's talk about turning the canoe around when it's in the wrong direction. You want to get to the finish line, you've been in a canoe, you turn around and aim for the right finish line. We are headed the wrong way. So again, as I said earlier, end it now, repeal it. Don't mix it up in the next 12 weeks and expect to come up magically with a Disneyland perfect bill. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next in line, please. Yeah, these are all neighbor island. The people that we're listening to are from the neighbor island that flew in, please. Is he neighbor island? Are you from neighbor island?
I'm not, but I turned around and the big island man was waiting for his ideas to be finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Aloha, Chair Evans and rest of the committee. My name is Fernando Salas. I'm from the Big Island. And after I heard all the testifiers, I'm here thinking, well, what can I say to this committee that will be affected, And I came with the conclusion that I'm overwhelmed with the response. Everybody here has effectively shared their opinion and input on repealing this PLDC. And from my point of view, I'm an organic farmer. Please, kill this bill. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from Neighbor Island? Okay, the way I'm going to do this, we did have written testimony submitted by 5 o'clock, and I believe some of them are in the audience, and we also had people that signed in. So I'm going to start with the people that submitted testimony by 5 o'clock and are in the audience. I'm going to call out them. William Isla.
Madam Chair, as I testified earlier, the department on all of the following bills appreciates the intent, but again, we would prefer House Bill 942, House Draft 1.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
Aloha chairs, vice chairs, and distinguished members of the committees. My name is Brianne Uhiva. I'm the Chief Advocate of the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. Thank you for the opportunity this morning to present our testimony. It looks like on all of the PLDC bills. Our bill from our package is HB 219, which I'll talk about in a second. Our position on that is a position of strong support. We oppose HB 1134 because we don't believe it addresses the concerns that we have, that we tried to address with our bill, HB 219. And we have also submitted testimony in support of the two repeal bills. To give a very little bit of background, because I'm going to try my best to obey the 2-minute rule, prior to his passing, Professor John Van Dyke worked with our office to identify concerns with Act 55, now Chapter 171C, creating the Public Land Development Corporation. It was a long list of concerns, and I want to begin our testimony by acknowledging the concerns that have been raised throughout the morning already regarding the PLDC, and explain that our bill is specifically focused on the concerns that are most relevant to our kuleana and our mandate within the state. We are the principal public agency within the state responsible for fulfilling the state's responsibility to protect Native Hawaiian rights, Native Hawaiian cultural and natural resources. And that was the intent of the focus of our bill, HB 219, to really address the concerns about the PLDC that were most relevant to Native Hawaiian rights and Native Hawaiian cultural and natural resources. So I did want to say we don't want to discount the validity of any other concerns that are being raised this morning. We just, because of our mandate, chose to focus specifically on those issues. The main main issues were related to the public land trust revenues that are set aside for the Office of Hawaiian Affairs for the betterment of the conditions of Native Hawaiians, which is one of the purposes of the public land trust. And then also looking at the land use and zoning laws that act to protect the constitutional rights of Native Hawaiians to continue traditional and customary practices. Over the course of the past 2 years of our advocacy on this issue of the Public Land Development Corporation, we've heard much go back and forth about, well, you know, it's in the Constitution, so why do we need these rules? These land use and zoning laws are the actual laws that Native Hawaiians can turn to enforce the constitutional rights that are guaranteed to them here in the state of Hawaii. These are laws that are on the books, along with the similarly, the laws that provide for the pro rata share of public land trust revenues to go to OHA are laws that other state agencies have to comply with already, and our bill would ensure that the Public Land Development Corporation, like other state agencies, would have to continue to respect these Native Hawaiian rights. And continue to respect the rights regarding the transfer of pro rata revenue. As far as HB 1134 is concerned, we don't believe that it addresses these major concerns, and so for that position, we submitted testimony in opposition to that bill. And we do believe that the two repeal bills, by simply repealing the Public Land Development Corporation, would address the concerns that we have regarding Native Hawaiian rights, and for that reason, we support those as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone here from Conservation Council of Hawaii representing them? Okay, Hawaii Thousand Friends. Hawaii Thousand Friends. No. Building Industry Association of Hawaii. Oh, here we go. Yes, thank you.
My name is Donna Wong. I'm the Executive Director of Hawaii's Thousand Friends, and we are presenting testimony in support of 1133 and HB 589 in opposition to all of the other bills. Hawaii's public lands are public resources, and their utilization must comply with the state constitution. The Constitution, adopted in 1978, restricts the development of public lands to certain specific public uses. The Constitution, Article 11, Conservation, Control, and Development of Resources, Section 1 states, for the benefit of present and future generations, the state and its political subdivisions shall conserve and protect Hawaii's natural beauty and all the natural resources, including land, water, air, minerals, and energy sources, and shall promote the development and utilization of these resources in a manner consistent with their conservation and in furtherance of the self-sufficiency of the state. All public natural resources are held in trust for the state, by the state, for the benefit of the people. Act 55, passed in 2011, Section 1, Findings and Purpose states, the purpose of this chapter is to create a vehicle and process to make optimal use of public land for the economic, environmental, and social benefit of the people of Hawaii. Act 55, Section 4B, appears to protect public trust land, but this section finishes with words, except as expressly provided in this chapter, and the chapter expressly gives PLDC Board almost unlimited powers to develop public trust lands for what they deem private benefit at public expense. Article 11, Section 1 requires public land trustees to promote the development and utilization of these resources in a manner consistent with their conservation and in furtherance of the self-sufficiency of the state. But Act 55 turns the words conservation and furtherance of self-sufficiency on their heads when it allows optimization projects to use public lands to create revenue-generating centers or to exploit local and international markets. Under Act 55, the public trust mandated by the Hawaii Constitution has morphed into a developer's business plan, replete with uncontrolled opportunities to spend state funds and dispose of public land primarily for the benefit of private entities. To help restore the public's faith in the legislative process and their elected officials, we urge you to pass 1133, 589, and hold the other bills. I'd also at this point like to make a footnote and go on record of supporting HB 1133 and HB 589 is a risk. We've already seen the gut and replace occurring now. And so we run the risk, all of us who've testified and supported these bills, that somewhere along the line until the end of the session, the language in these bills is changed so that it's no longer a repeal bill. And then all of us will go on record as supporting them. So I would like it noted that Hawaii's 1,000 Friends will not support any language in 1133 or 589 that doesn't support complete repeal of Act 55.
Okay. Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs.
It's a pleasure to be here today. Aloha, chairs and members of the committee. My name is Suli Stroud. I'm president of the Association of Hawaiian Civic Clubs. Here today to support House Bill 219. I might add that on January 19th, the Association Board of Directors met, and we agree that this proposed measure from OHA merits support of our organization. I also wanted to explain that the association submitted 2 written testimonies. So the next one I'm referring to is the testimony in regards to recommendations, not support nor repeal, but recommendations. There's 21 recommendations that are outlined in our testimony. I'd also like to clarify that we are a membership organization dating back to 1918. Currently, there's over 4,000 members in the association. Also, part of our process is each year we convene an annual convention. We did convene a convention in Washington, D.C. in October of this last year. We had 389 delegates attend the convention, representing the 4,000 members of the association. There was 2 resolutions that were brought before the House of Delegates. One resolution was to repeal, and that resolution was taken through our process, went to committee, and was not adopted by the committee. However, there was another resolution that was considered at the convention, and that one was to follow the guidelines that we were suggesting in this resolution. That resolution was adopted on the floor. I might add that the voice of the delegation was a majority voice, and certainly a lot has happened since October. But today, the association, on record, based on the action of our delegation, again brings to this body today the 21 recommendations that are listed. Mahalo.
Thank you. Windward Aupua Alliance.
Can I be heard?
I can hear. I think so. No?
Good afternoon, members of the Water and Land and Finance Committees of the State House of Representatives. My name is Shannon Wood, the president and co-founder of the Windward Aupua Alliance, a 501c3 Hawaii nonprofit corporation, which was established in July 2002 to create the Ko'olau Greenbelt and Heritage Trail System in order to restore, protect, and provide public access to the Mauka lands on the windward side of Oahu along the base of Nako'olau, as well as to support locally owned sustainable economic activities in the more developed areas. Its mandate, however, has expanded over the past 10 years well beyond these important regional issues. WAA now works to educate and inform residents, visitors, businesses, policymakers at all levels of government and the media about using smart growth principles which promote sustainability through urban redevelopment to protect agricultural and conservation lands. Although 2 years ago I began working closely with policymakers on legislation which later became Act 55-2011, because I was particularly interested in making sure that smart growth concepts such as complete streets, transit-oriented development between Aloha Stadium and Ala Moana, and urban redevelopment would underlie its rationale. Because of the time constraints, I'm only going to go through 6 proposed amendments to help address concerns about the Public Land Development Corporation so that it will remain alive. 1, establish a pilot project of no less than 5 years to be developed only on urban designated land here on Oahu to demonstrate the PLDC's concepts. Furthermore, the land selected has to have been designated urban for at least 5 years prior to the application. Number 2, establish PLDC transit-oriented development priorities between Pearl City and Iwilei, especially at Aloha Stadium. Number 3, preserve and protect the Stadium Facility Special Fund from the repeal of Act 282-2012. This concept was initiated by a small group of University of Hawaii football fans back in 2009 when the NCAA Division 1A conference realignment talks began to heat up by redeveloping a portion of the 115 acres of parking lot right in the center of urban Oahu. Significant capital improvements could be generated from private sector resources over the next 35 to 40 years. Income generated by this would be placed in the Stadium Facilities Special Fund. Number 4, evaluate and, if appropriate, change PLDC administrative rules to amendments to Act 55-2011 and Act 282-2012. Number 5, if PLDC remains in the books, establish special capital improvement programs over time for other state departments besides the Departments of Education, Accounting and General Services, and Land and Natural Resources. And number 6, seriously consider moving PLDC to the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this, make this presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Building Industry Association of Hawaii. Okay, Outdoor Circle. Yeah, excuse me one moment. Arvid, I see you standing there. I'm going by those that got testimony in by 5 o'clock, and it appears in the order that it came if they're in the audience. But I'll get to you here shortly.
Chair, if I could just note my son, for purposes of disclosure, my son is president of BIA.
Okay, no conflict. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, please. Bob.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Chair, I don't agree with him.
Okay. All right, thanks. So noted. Yes, Mr. Loy.
Okay, take 2. Before I start on the PLDC bills, I do have a couple of comments about HB 942. I didn't want to take time to do full testimony on both, so I just want to briefly say that the Outdoor Circle opposes the Harbors and Parks Authority. Increased commercial development in our harbors is going to mean further development of our coastlines, which is going to mean further development in that prized area. One of the most beautiful parts, one of the most iconic features of Hawaii is its coastline, and the Outdoor Circle opposes further development on those coastlines, especially in this manner. The Parks Project, the Outdoor Circle has a full-time policy. So vicious and so regular are the attacks on public land that we've developed a policy covering public land sale, regardless of what it is. And it has to do with parklands and conservation lands and preservation lands, and we do oppose the sale of any parkland for any type of commercial purpose. Now on to the PLDC. The Outdoor Circle has long held that this legislation, that the legislation that created the PLDC is fatally flawed in a number of ways, and that the entity, the PLDC, is a destructive and divisive government agency that must be dissolved through the repeal of Act 85. We're most concerned about the undemocratic manner in which Act 55 was passed by the 2011 legislature. Sneaky might be a better way of putting it. The senseless exemptions the PLDC was granted from the very laws designed to protect the environment of our state in development decisions. The removal of PLDC lands from the definition of public land and the inevitable commercialization of public land for the exclusive financial benefit of the developers. The manipulative public hearing process used for creating PLDC administrative rules and the horribly disrespectful manner in which its supporters denigrated PLDC opponents and worked to stifle public discussion. These are all the ingredients of a toxic situation that really must come to an end. The Outdoor Circle believes that in protecting the constitutional right of Hawaii residents to live in a healthy environment, that we must support the prudent use of our lands for the benefit of all people. We must staunchly defend state and county environmental reviews that require careful study and public input before project approvals. We encourage permitting and zoning that hold developers to agreed upon standards that ensure projects can proceed while protecting Hawaii's natural beauty and the environment. These most basic principles are compromised by the PLDC. The only way to address the threat to Hawaii posed by the PLDC is by wiping the slate absolutely clean. No amount of tinkering or massaging will ever make the PLDC an entity that has the trust of the people of Hawaii. If we are to engage in the kind of partnerships envisioned by the architects of the PLDC, then we must begin anew with a completely transparent process that includes all of the stakeholders. Only then can we build a new, better law that addresses the many concerns expressed statewide about the PLDC and the manner in which it was created. So first, repeal Act 55 and all legislation related to it, including these PLDC light bills, these PLDC segmentation bills like harbors and parks. Then engage the residents of Hawaii in a meaningful process to improve permitting and zoning procedures for our islands and protect the beauty of Hawaii forever. Thank you very much.
Okay. United here, Local 5, Hawaii. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Good morning again, Chair Evans, Chair Luke. Cade Watanabe here on behalf of Unite Here Local 5. I will summarize my comments and for the most part stand on our written testimony that you should have.
Thank you.
But for the record, we stand in opposition to HB 219, 593, 1134 and support the two remaining bills, HB 1133 and 589, and call for the full repeal. I just wanted to add that this entire process has been quite frustrating to many of us who have attempted to bring particular concerns to be heard regarding the creation of PLDC. I would also add that we are confident and thankful that the committee is hearing at least the two bills towards the end of the agenda today that would address the full repeal of the legislation. So we thank you. And we are confident that you have heard the overwhelming opposition to PLDC. And we're confident that the committees will defer and oppose those bills that we stand in opposition to, and that we will move forward with the business of the day, so to speak. So thank you for your time. It's been quite frustrating over and over again in meetings we've had directly with the administration, with the governor himself, appearing before each and every one of the PLDC rules-making hearings. But now we have the ability to come before you, and we have confidence that you will do the right thing in repealing PLDC in its entirety. So thank you very much.
Thank you. League of Women Voters.
Karen Amai for the League of Women Voters. I only have 5 sentences, but they're 900 words long. Okay. I'm not going to repeat anything that other people said, but by keeping all of the exemptions from all of the statutes, ordinances, charter provisions, rules, and regs, these bills literally break all of the above laws, rules, and regs. It is counterintuitive to good government to even recommend such a wholesale sellout of the protections currently afforded to the resident stakeholders of Hawaii. These lands are the people's lands in perpetuity. Development in light of perpetuity need not be rushed through, but should follow the long, tedious, and protective processes that are in place. We urge you to vote down 1134 when we support the full repeal of PLDC.
Okay, thank you. Hawaii Advocates for Consumer Rights, Scott Poster, are you still here? Okay. Indigenous Consultants, Mililani Trask. Let's see. Life of the Land. Okay, we can come back. Kahea, Hawaiian Environmental Alliance. Oh, okay.
Aloha, Henry Curtis with Life of the Land, addressing now the 6 legislators who are left. Thank you. Life of the Land opposes all of the bills attempting to modify or restructure or change the title of PLDC, and we support the total repeal. We believe that the PLDC is unconstitutional, that the Constitution requires 3 readings, requires a certain process to exist which has not been placed into law through Act 55. Any attempt to change the law, to give it a new buzzword, does not address the fundamental constitutionality of the original law. And therefore, any attempt to change it and to put something temporarily in its place or to have some kind of pilot project move forward would only end up in litigation and with the certainty that the Supreme Court would declare the law unconstitutional. Therefore, the only thing that we can do is to repeal it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Chun James still here?
I'm still here. I came all the way from Kahuku, so I want to make sure I want to optimize those miles. I want to share with you this picture. It's nothing personal, but the process and all those of us who have spent the time reading, we are certainly very astounded by what is happening to our democratic society. I am a mother of 4 Eagle Scouts, and I used to be a merit badge counselor for citizenship in the community and citizenship in the nation. And we always teach our young people, the wonderful democratic opportunities of public engagement and public good and all this and all that. And then just these few years, I have really, really thought back and said, wow, I have not really taught them what is really, really happening in our government. It seems like what is happening in parts of our government today is nowhere near reflecting the ideals of a democratic society. And so I hope that today that we will be able to, like so many of the testifiers say, we will be able to restore the trust, restore the ideals of what a democratic society should be, and restore the ideas of what our democratic cornerstone should hold for. I just wanted to say a few points. First, to be on the record that we oppose as Country Talk Story all the bills, and that we presently support HB 1133. And like what the Hawaii Thousand Friends said, we are supporting it today because of the verbiage on the existing bill, and we hope that there will not be any gut and replace or any semantic jujitsu that would go on that would change what we have been led to believe and what we believe is good. So in essence, we are all for complete repeal of PLDC because this is one idea that has gone really, really mad and bad and also gone very amok. Let me just say a few points. There are good intentions, obviously. We're not questioning it, the intentions of those who have put the bill together, even though we should. But good intentions, as someone has said, that the way to hell is paved with good intentions. And as I read through some of the conditions of PLDC, there's just so much, but let me emphasize on one because I am a real estate broker. In the proposed Bill 303, it utterly disrespects private property rights and gives government the big arm of power to be able to engage in eminent domain. So it says that if PLDC feels that it needs or it wants land for development, it could do so by eminent domain. Also, private property owners who live adjacent to a PLDC project, can be compelled, that's the word that was used, can be compelled to help pay for the infrastructure. So in other words, we are having to deal with very insensitive and very all-powerful fiefdom that can do whatever they want, anytime they want, and if they want your property, they can take it from you. To me, this is more like living in China than in the great United States of America. And so that's just one of many, many, many very atrocious anti-democratic principles that is engaged in the PLDC. We have been assured that, oh no, we're not selling the property. We're not selling the property, but let me tell you that if a property is leased for 55 years or 65 years, it is just as good as selling them. Because a lessor pretty much relinquished the rights to its land when it gives lessees that kind of a long leases. And also, I'm just going to point out a few more. I love development. I think development is an exciting thing to do, and development brings money, and development is good, but there is a time and a purpose for it. Speaking as a developer, PLDC would be exactly what I would dream for. It is an optimum situation. It's an optimum environment. It's an optimum project because you can do what you want, and the big government is going to support you and allow you to do what you want. So in that sense, PLDC is optimal good business for developers. But
so, Chun, can you summarize
yes,
for us for sake of time? Thank you.
But it's optimal bad business for the public good. And again, it is important for us to get back to the basics. We already have the infrastructure, we already have the system that service Hawaii. We need to practice better fiscal management, better fiscal priority, and do not create any more new fiefdom because we don't need it. We just have to make sure that we help the existing organization, the department, be more efficient and effective. Thank you very much.
Okay. So for the audience, I'm going to call out the next 15 names because now we're down to people who signed in today to testify. So just know that I'm getting to you the best as fast as we can. The first one would be Fernando Salas. The second would be Lynn Sager. The third, Bart Dame. 4, Robert Harris. 5, Alan Burdick. 6, Juanita. I think Juanita you already spoke, but Juanita if you haven't. 7, Bill Sager. 8, Keiko Bonk. 9, Mary Barter. 10, Katie Watanabe. 11, Michelle Matson. 12, Aria Levine. 13, Mahina Martin. 14, Karen Mai, I believe. 15, Arvid Youngquist. So that's the next 15 testifiers. So is Fernando Salas here? Okay. Lynn Sager.
Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Lynn Sager. I am chair of the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii. My esteemed father will be giving the official caucus testimony, but I wanted to speak to you as an individual today and say that I support full repeal of Act 55. I also find that it is unconstitutional the way it was pushed through. And I would ask that you do stop and repeal today. Thank you.
Thank you. Bart Dame. Okay. Robert Harris.
Aloha, chairs, members of the joint committees. I will be very brief in the interest of time. The Sierra Club supports a full repeal of the PLDC. We've certainly heard from a great number of the public, and it's clear that there's a general level of concern about the idea of using public resources or natural resources as an item to be sold or traded or developed for profit. And there's also deep level of concern about the lack of public review, transparency, whether it be the procurement code all the way down to long-term planning and the community development plans. So for this sake, we urge that you repeal the PLDC and allow us to start the conversation about how best to fund our parks and harbors and other kinds of things. Thank you.
15, or you have to take a break? Well, I'll just take a break. Sorry, we have to take a short break for the TV guys have to change their DVDs. So we'll just take maybe a 2-minute break while they change their DVDs for their recording. Yeah.